my name is Emily, and this is Breezing Through. I have ADHD personally, and my daughter, who is almost 8, is autistic. And I want to start a series that is about navigating disability within public education from a parent's perspective. So today, I want to talk about my experience with disability and special education. We'll start at the beginning with me. So when I was in elementary school, I was very energetic, always busy, but I really struggled in school. And until second grade, my parents have admitted this, they weren't sure I was quite so bright, especially with my older brother being very, very intelligent. And when I took the first state test in second grade, which was a standardized test, I had incredible scores, very, very high. So high, in fact, that my parents had me privately retested because they weren't sure that, one, it wasn't a fluke, and two, that they were accurate scores. I, again, got very, very high scores. So my parents realized that there was a disconnect here. They weren't sure what it was. This was the 90s. Diagnosing girls with ADHD or ADD at that time, they were separate things, wasn't a thing, especially not a kind of average-ish girl who was just struggling in school. So kind of just then started continuing to go through school. I will say I had some incredible teachers. That second grade teacher was very invested in me. I think she saw that I had potential but was struggling. She spent a lot of time working with me. She even came to my house multiple times. And my parents did start working on getting me tutors for different things, especially math. I always struggled in math. And then I also had a very good third grade teacher who, again, invested a lot of time and energy into me. And my parents ended up hiring her to be my math tutor for 4th through 6th grade, which was great. I continued to struggle in school, but I continued to do really well on the standardized tests. So my scores were not really matching my grades or my performance in school, which was something that no one could really figure out. My parents were doing their best. Again, it was the 90s. I also had a super busy after school schedule, and this was me. I very much drove this. I was very athletic. I always had a sport going on, and I also danced. I danced, and then I was always babysitting, watching kids working. I was always busy doing something. And so I had outlets for my energy. So I kind of continued on this path of like struggling, but doing well in standardized tests until about my junior year of high school. I went to a high school that offered the International Baccalaureate program, which is an international high school diploma that typically kids in Europe, and I believe parts of Africa and Asia also have as well. I believe it's offered in South America too. I'm not 100% sure. So my school offered the IB diploma, and I decided to do the full IB diploma. You could do either like a certificate in a certain class or classes, or do a full-blown IB diploma, which is very intense. There are language requirements. There are other requirements. You have to write a full-blown like research paper for every single class, including math, and then you have like an all-encompassing paper that you write on a topic of your choosing that you have an advisor for. Like, it's very, very intense. All of your tests, when you take IB tests, are sent off to different teachers all around the world to be graded. It is very intense. So I've been prepping for this. I've been taking pre-IB classes freshman and sophomore year. I get into junior year and I hit burnout. Obviously not knowing what that is. And my schedule was really, really full. And then I had all these other extracurriculars. And I would study and study and study for tests. And I knew the material before I got to the test. But with IB, it is not multiple choice, very much like AP is. It's very different, where you are given a prompt and you have to provide an answer in your own words. And for someone who has ADHD that's undiagnosed and doesn't know what they're doing, that's very overwhelming. And so I was hitting a wall. So I'd study for these tests, and then I'd get into the test and I would take the test and I would totally bomb. And I was also doing other things that were weird. I was lying about having homework. I was lying about like totally inconsequential things. And my grades that were usually A's and B's with a C in math were slipping. I was getting C's and D's. At the same time this was happening, my family was seeing a psychiatrist for other reasons. And my mom brought up my issues to the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist said, I think she has ADD. Like, this might be something we need to look into. So we ended up doing the evaluation, and I, in fact, was diagnosed with ADD, which the DSM has now combined ADD and ADHD into one. So when I talk about it, I refer to it as ADHD. I was 16, almost 17 when I was diagnosed. And I was immediately put on medication because that's what I wanted. And I also started regular therapy sessions, I think once a week, maybe once every other week, with my then psychiatrist, because she really wanted to focus on giving me tools on how to work with my ADHD outside of medication, which was awesome. So we then start school in the fall, because this was in the summer. I'm now 17, and my mom starts the process of getting me a 504 plan. And I will do a whole other video on 504s and IEPs. So we ended up meeting with all of my teachers and the administration, my parents, myself. So this is a lot of people, a lot of adults in this room with a 17-year-old girl. And we were talking about the accommodations I would need. And I remember some of the teachers were super, super supportive. Some were not. And I have a very distinct memory of one of the teachers saying, why does she all of a sudden need accommodate? Like, why is it my responsibility to provide this to her? And why does she all of a sudden need it in her senior year of high school when she hasn't before? And the administration explained it to him, and my mom explained it to him. And to give him credit, he was probably in his 60s and had been teaching a very, very long time. But I will say he was one of the most accommodating teachers my senior year for me. He really, I think at first was put off by it, but in the end ended up being one of my favorite high school teachers, and I had really great memories from that class. So then I got through my senior year. I received my IB diploma, and then I went to college, and I ended up going to the Disability Resource Center. Every single public university has one. And I was able to then get accommodations for testing and assignments, as well as note taking through the Disability Resource Center. A lot of people don't know that those are available on campuses. Make sure you find where that is if you have a disability, and make sure you take advantage of that. This really, really helped me as someone who'd already been struggling in school and did not like school. This helped me get through college. I will say, school is so hard for me. I have my husband who has five degrees, who on a regular basis threatens to go back and get a PhD. He has an LLM. He doesn't need a PhD. That's like an advanced law degree. And then there's me, who cannot stand school. I have a bachelor's degree and I'm done. No more school for me. Those things got me through at least the very end of school. And I realized that I was not stupid. I was not, in fact, flighty or incapable of making it through school. I have a disability. I have a difference in my brain that keeps me from learning in the way that most school systems are set up. And so having that understanding, the therapies that I had for it, and then as well as the accommodations I had within the school system, helped me graduate and get through college. Without them, I don't think I would have done either. So that was my experience as a student. So now let's talk about my experience as a parent. So my daughter, who is almost 8, was, when she was about 2.5, she had a speech delay, very clearly was not talking, had very few words, and was definitely also showing signs of autism. There's autism in our family. Most of it was diagnosed much later in life, but I knew what to look for. I'd done the research. We all know it's genetic, and it was very possible that I could possibly have a child that was autistic. And so I made sure that I was aware of what to look for. Well, in the meantime, we had a close family member who was a school psychologist in the county that we lived in, reached out to me and said, hey, I know that you're worried about the speech delay. Go to Child Find. We lived in Virginia at the time, and every state in the United States of America has a program, and they all call it something different, but it is for children from the ages of 18 months to 3 years of age, to have them evaluated to see if they have any disabilities under IDEA, and then to provide them services if they do. And so since my daughter was under the age of 3, we took her to Child Find in Virginia and had her evaluated, and under their evaluation and IDEA, she fell under the autism category, which meant that she would be provided services from the county. To clarify, the services they were giving her were, she would be in an autism classroom. There was no speech, there was no OT, there was nothing. It was just being in this classroom, which at the time I did not know wasn't sufficient. That was in like October of 2019. She started in her autism classroom in January of 2020. because of course. Well, after I think it was a month, we get a call from her team that said we need to have an IEP meeting to discuss changing some of her goals and changing the classroom that she's in because she is not thriving here. In that specific classroom, all of the students were autistic, but she was the only one that really was trying to engage with the other kids and trying to have social interactions. So they suggested moving her to a general disability classroom because the general disability classroom had kids that were more social and it was a better fit for her. So we decided to do that in February. Well, then March happened. And we all know what happened in March of 2020. Everything shut down and we started doing virtual school / homeschool. So we met with her special education teacher on a weekly basis. She would send stuff to me to work on with her. We worked on her goals. At the end of April, beginning of May, our daughter had her medical evaluation for autism. The team that evaluated her kept asking us if she was receiving speech or OT or any other kinds of services outside of just being in this disability classroom. I kept saying no, that that's not in her IEP. And they kept saying that is not okay. She needs to have speech. She needs to have OT. There are things that are not being addressed that need to be addressed. Well, at this point, everything's virtual. Doesn't look like we're going back to in-person school anytime soon. And that same week, we decided we were going to move to Tennessee from Virginia. And part of where we decided to move was because we found a school that was an inclusive preschool. So it was about 50% kids that had disabilities and kids that didn't in each classroom. Very, very small classes with 2 teachers each. And it also provided services and therapies in the building. It was also part of a whole building of developmental pediatricians that also had private services and therapies as well. So this was a big, big draw for us. There's this school, and just so happens, the county that this school is in has a contract with this school for, I think it was 20 seats for students with disabilities that the county could place there. So the county would pay the school to have kids attend the school because they didn't have sufficient space or facilities or teachers or classes or whatever for these special education preschool kids to attend within the county. So we know about this, and I start looking at houses, and I decide I'm going to find a house that is within the district that the county would send us to this preschool, because we could go privately. That was an option, or we could be placed by the county. So I put us on the wait list for the private side, and then I found a house where we could be placed on the public side. And we bought that house. I was very insistent we needed to live in this specific neighborhood because we needed to go to that school. And then we ended up having the IEP meeting with her new team in Tennessee. And they were like, look, you have 2 different options. You can go to this school, or you can go to the school that your preference is. And I said, well, you can put us there, or we'll put ourselves there privately, because we didn't move here to go to the other school. I know nothing about this other school. No offense to this other school. Again, I know nothing about it. So the county placed us at our preferred school. Well, so now she has an IEP. She's in a school. She's there placed as a county student. And we were in constant communication with her teacher. And I will say, this preschool teacher that she had that first year was impeccable. Just cannot say enough about this amazing woman. She called me constantly to give me updates about how things were going with my daughter. And she constantly was going, hey, I know this isn't in her IEP, but I really think that we need to add this to her IEP. Great. She's not getting these services, but I really think she needs to get these services. Great. Constantly. I know that is not the norm. I cannot express how grateful I am to this teacher, because she really was very focused on making sure that, I'm sure all the kids in that class, but I know my daughter received the services and the accommodations that she specifically needed. So after that year number 2, the preschool terminated their contract with the county for a lot of complicated reasons, but we were able to keep our spot at the preschool because we were already there. So our daughter's IEP, individualized education plan, turned into an ISP, which is an individualized service plan. And those are for students who reside in a specific county but go to a private school. So the county then also still provides services to that student at the private school. So she was still getting speech, OT, which was great, because she was also getting private therapies through the preschool at the same time. So we were getting all sorts of therapies. So we live in Tennessee, and in Tennessee, we have school choice. Now, I know most people associate school choice with vouchers. And while that is the case now in Tennessee, as of like a month ago, that was not the case at the time. In Tennessee, school choice meant that you can really kind of pick and choose where you send your kid to school. You don't have to send them exactly to the school you're zoned for. There are magnet schools, there are charter schools, there's like the lottery that you can send your kid to a different, like there's so many different options. And then we have all of these private schools here. There's so many private schools. And so we had a lot of options and had no idea where to start. So we actually met with the administration from the preschool, and they actually walked us through pretty much every school within 20 miles, private and public, and said, this is a good one, this is not a good one. They have a bad reputation for handling kids with disabilities and IEPs. This is a public school, but they have a very bad reputation for handling IEPs and evaluations. This is a private school that will not accept a disabled kid. This is a private school that will and will accommodate. I still have the notebook. I have pages and pages and pages of notes from that meeting. It was so incredibly amazing. They weren't going to tell us the best fit for our daughter because they knew that, this was our choice as a family and that there's public and private. And they did give us ones that they felt like would be a good fit. So I think we had like 4 or 5 that were like, these will be a good fit for your family from what we know. My husband and I started touring schools. We went to public schools, we went to private schools, and it kind of came down to a private school that's really close to our house and a public school that's really close to our house. That was the public school we were zoned for. And my husband and I both went to public schools, and I am a big proponent of attending public schools and pouring into your public school. And even if your public school isn't a great public school, to do what you can to better your public school. So we really wanted to go with the public school option, if possible. So we ended up doing a tour of the public school, and the then assistant principal was incredible. We had such an amazing experience doing the tour with her. And at the end, she said, why don't you bring your daughter back and part of her therapy team, and we will do another tour and make sure we have everybody's questions answered. I was like, what? This woman has a very extensive education background, including special education and a behavioral specialist within public schools. So she knew what she was doing. Still does. She's incredible. She's now our principal. We went to that school. We ended up going to that school, and it has been an incredible fit for our daughter. They have been very, very accommodating for her in adding things to her IEP, making sure that she has what she needs, doing things that aren't even in her IEP. They're so thoughtful about which classes they place her in. They even took her into consideration when doing all of the classes for the grade she's in now, even though we weren't here at the beginning of the year. They knew that we were going to be gone and that we would be back in January because we were in Argentina. And they had her in a class. They'd already had it figured out, so that when we got back from Argentina and I took her to the school before winter break, so she knew what class she'd be in and everything when she came back in January, they already knew where she was going. They knew what teacher she had. They had everything set up. So we have had an excellent experience in Tennessee. I will say, looking back, I'm not impressed with what they were doing in Virginia outside of DC, in actually the same county that I grew up in, that I had my experiences in. So that is my experience as both a student and a parent of disabilities within the public school system in the United States. And like I said, this is going to be a series. I'm going to be talking about how to start advocating for your child if you believe that they have a disability, getting an IEP or a 504, what happens when you need to add a diagnosis to an IEP or a 504, and I'll keep adding on to that. Also, if you have any topics that you want me to discuss around navigating disability within public education, please let me know in the comments. I would love to cover other things because I want to make sure that this is as informative as possible. And I will be directing you to other creators as well that I know are experts in these topics as I'm discussing them, and I'm providing information from my personal experience and my research. But people that are experts, like when we get into the IEP and 504 thing, there are a number of creators that are advocates for those things that I will direct you to because they're incredible when it comes to that. So hopefully this was helpful. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.